The spark they buried. They thought it would be easy. A faded robin's egg blue mailbox, some roses in bloom, a garden gnome, and an elderly woman who lived alone. That's all it took for the ruthless HOA of Creststone Trails to begin its quiet siege. They wrapped their rules in legal language, their greed in policy, and their power in community standards. But they didn't know that this woman, Helen Warren, had a son. And that son didn't just fight back. He became a judge. And when justice came knocking, it wasn't loud. It was surgical. Helen had spent nearly 5 decades waking before dawn, grading spelling tests by lamplight, tying shoelaces, and drying tears from children who weren't hers by blood, but were hers by heart. She didn't have a retirement ceremony. No fanfare, no photos. Just a quiet breath as she stepped out of her second-grade classroom for the final time. She was 73. A widow for over a decade, Helen didn't crave luxury. She didn't cruise or collect trinkets. Instead, she saved. Every spare dollar tucked into a jar or a bond was meant for something sacred, her peace. And that peace took form in a soft yellow cottage in Mesa, Arizona. 2 bedrooms, a weathered picket fence, a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Her son, Marcus Warren, helped her move in. He joked that the house looked like something out of a Christmas movie. She laughed and made him promise Sunday lunches, no matter what. She painted the mailbox a gentle robin's egg blue, hung family photos, planted roses, waved at neighbors, wrote little notes to the mailman. It wasn't grand, but it was hers, truly hers, or so she thought. 3 weeks in, the first envelope arrived. Subject line, violation notice. Offense, mailbox color non-compliant with HOA standards. Fine, $75. Helen had never lived in an HOA community before. She understood the idea of shared rules, but this? She thought it must be a mistake. Blue was peaceful, not offensive. But she paid. Quietly. Respectfully. Then came the next letter. And the next. And the next. Unauthorized bird feeder, $50. Improper lawn edging, $95. Non conforming curtains, $120. Non-compliant decor, garden gnome, $60. Each letter was precise, clinical, cold. Each felt less like communication and more like surveillance. Helen tried to reach someone at the HOA office. The receptionist, polite but robotic, told her all communication must be in writing. No exceptions. Refer to the community guidelines. So she did. She read the 92-page HOA handbook cover to cover. There were rules about the type of wreaths you could hang, the opacity of curtains, even the number of potted plants allowed. It wasn't a guidebook. It was a trap. Helen removed the bird feeder, changed the curtains, paid the fines, but the letters never stopped. What began as minor aesthetic concerns became weapons of control. Vague charges appeared. Landscape inconsistencies, structural adjacency violations, visual disruption. She didn't understand what they meant. She only knew the balance kept growing. By the 6th month, Helen owed over $1,600. And then came the letter. Final warning. Balance due, $1,643. Failure to remit payment will result in foreclosure proceedings under Arizona Statute 33 to 1807. She read the letter 3 times. The numbers didn't change. Helen had never missed a payment in her life. Not a mortgage, not a utility bill. She lived with dignity. Modestly, always within her means. Now, she was being told she might lose the very home she had saved her life for over a mailbox. She sought help. A real estate attorney downtown agreed to take her case, until he didn't. 2 days later, his assistant called to withdraw, citing a conflict of interest. No explicación. No refund. Only later would she learn that the law firm represented Creststone Trails HOA. It was never about a mailbox. It was about power, and she had none. The chains weren't iron. They were paper, and they were just as tight. Marcus Warren received the call just after midnight in Chicago. He hadn't heard his mother cry like that since his father passed. But this wasn't grief. It was shame. By dawn, he was on a red-eye flight to Arizona. When he found the address she gave him, He thought he was in the wrong place. A worn-down roadside motel. Room 6. He knocked. She opened the door. Her eyes were puffy. Her voice a whisper. Her hands trembling. Inside, her life had been reduced to 2 plastic grocery bags. A few blouses. Her medication. A paperback novel. They said I was trespassing, she told him, not making eye contact. They locked me out of my own house. The HOA had sent a private contractor to change the locks, post enforcement notices, and trample her rose bushes. Helen had nowhere to go. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He called lawyers, advocates, legal clinics. The response was the same. They're within their rights. One lawyer even chuckled. I've seen a dozen of these. The HOA always wins. Marcus clenched his fists, but he didn't yell. He sat beside her as she slept and made a decision. If the system was designed to crush his mother, he would learn how to break it. Marcus Warren was not a lawyer. Not yet. But he was a systems engineer, and systems had patterns. He started asking questions. Why weren't the HOA's financial records public? Why did they use the same law firm every time? Why were the fines identical across multiple homes? Neighbors began to talk. Quietly. They fined me for oil stains on my driveway, said one man. I don't even own a car. They called my curtains aggressive. They told me I had to get rid of my grandson's tricycle. Then he met Mr. Harlan, a retired Marine in a wheelchair. The HOA foreclosed on his home over a $300 gutter violation he couldn't fix. His home was taken, no court hearing. Just silence. Marcus built spreadsheets, collected affidavits, cross-referenced foreclosure cases. The pattern was undeniable. Elderly, alone, vulnerable. The president of the Crestone HOA, Patrick Langford, a retired developer, had once been under federal review for discriminatory housing practices. Now he managed community standards. And the judge who signed most of the foreclosure orders? A close friend of Langford's. They had photos online, fishing together. This wasn't bureaucracy. This was predation. So Marcus applied to law school. He was 35, broke and angry. While other students dreamed of firm partnerships, he studied case law until dawn. He worked part-time at a legal aid clinic, volunteered for housing advocacy groups, took cases no one else wanted. People began to whisper, talk to Marcus. He understands. By the time he graduated, he wasn't just a lawyer. He was a movement. He opened Warren Legal Defense in a tiny office above a laundromat. His mother's rose print hung behind his desk. And then he won. An 80-year-old veteran in Tucson had been fined nearly $10,000 for planting sunflowers instead of approved shrubs. Marcus got the case tossed in court. Word spread. He launched Shield Home Alliance, a nonprofit offering legal defense to low-income homeowners battling HOA abuse. His website was simple, blue text on white background. But the stories poured in. They fined me while I was in chemotherapy. They threatened to sue me for a wheelchair ramp. They call my home aesthetic pollution. Marcus listened to everyone. When national media picked up the story, he didn't grandstand. He said, my mother nearly died because strangers thought they had more rights to her home than she did. That should never happen in America. Whistleblowers came forward. Internal HOA memos. Faked inspections. Kickbacks. Resident blacklists. Then came the case that changed everything. A disabled Vietnam veteran in Nevada lost his home over a $120 weed fine. Marcus argued it violated federal disability law. He won. The ruling set a national precedent. HOAs could no longer foreclose on homeowners with medical impairments without exhausting alternatives. The governor called, offered Marcus a judgeship on the state housing court. He accepted, and one morning, sitting at his desk, he opened a case file. Eleanor Bryant, 82 years old, retired librarian. Her violation? A wind chime, a bird bath, 3 succulents. Marcus froze. The names, the law firm, the board president, unchanged. Like ghosts. But this time, the machine had looped back into the wrong man. He did not recuse. Instead, he ordered an immediate stay on all pending foreclosures filed by Crestone Trails. He mandated a full audit. reopened prior cases, and the tremor became a quake. Federal agents raided the HOA's offices, arrested 6 board members, disbarred their law firm. Hundreds of residents filed a class action. Eleanor Bryant kept her wind chime. And Helen Warren? She got her home back. The court ruled the foreclosure illegal, the lien fraudulent. When Marcus handed her the keys, she just held them, then smiled. He doesn't talk about that motel room anymore. Not in interviews, not in speeches, but he remembers. Every time he rules on a housing case, every time someone calls him Your Honor. Sometimes, on quiet mornings, he passes by her house again. The roses have grown wild now, untamed, bright, not HOA approved. He never trims them, because justice isn't noise. It's memory, and sometimes it looks like a rose that survived.